back, friends. You're just in time for the Johnny Brew Show.
What's going on, everybody? My name is John Brookhagen, host of the Johnny Brew Show, and welcome to an episode that I have been really looking forward to. You know, here on the Johnny Brew Show, we are interviewing all of the candidates running for office as we continue to cover Red Wave 22. We have a special bent on education, as well as all of our conservative candidates, and we're really excited about everybody who's planning on coming in. What I need you guys to do is to subscribe. That way you'll get all the notifications. You don't have to wait till you see it on Facebook because you know they're burying my posts. Mm-hmm. You subscribe to YouTube, you'll get the notification. You'll know everything that's going on. And you'll get to hear from some great candidates coming up real soon. I'm not even going to tell you who because things happen. I don't want to make any promises I can't keep. But the one promise I can keep is that if you reach out, thejohnnybrewshow@gmail.com, text us 702-501-5304. Look up Common Sense Nevada, the public square, for all the common sense and logical thinking that we can do together as a unit. And also, if you're interested in the school board, there's the new CCSD Board of Trustees 22 and 24. We'll cover all that stuff. And your one-stop shop for all of that is simply subscribing on the YouTube channel. So, one promise I can make you is we have got the firecracker brand of the Republican Party candidate for Attorney General, Ms. Sigal Chattah. Welcome, finally.
Finally!
How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be here. I've been dying to come on to your show.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
And you're running for Attorney General.
I am.
And you've been making headlines. You're definitely a firecracker, as I described you earlier. And
I think so.
And why are you running for Attorney General?
So I'm running for Attorney General because I really see the trajectory of how the state is going, and it's breaking my heart. I moved here when I was 14 years old. I remember Las Vegas as Patagonia and perfect and paradise, and it's falling. It's paradise lost right now. So we got to change. And
then you mentioned some stuff. I was watching some things. First of all, your reasons are a lot like the reasons I started the Johnny Brew Show. I just felt like, what is everybody even saying? Like, no matter what you're listening to or what you're talking about, it seems so far-fetched from reality that I thought that it wasn't ever a niche until 2021 to just be a regular, intelligent person talking about what's going on in the world or in the country or in the state with just a logical point of view. It just seems like everybody's just talking nonsense all the time. It's like we're in bizarro world.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And nobody wants to hear the truth, right?
Right.
Nobody wants to hear the truth anymore.
Well, for example, I've been stalking you, trying to learn everything I can about you as we prepare for the interview, and I saw you talking an anecdote about one of the reasons that you really got involved and decided even Attorney General is that they were doling out some of the vaccines based on race rather than on age or predilection to the coronavirus, and they were talking specifically, you said, about your parents. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the vaccine, I call it the vaccine case. My parents were not over the age of 75, so they were in that over 65, but not quite 75. And my parents were upset because, you had the vaccines being rolled out to like 25-year-old clerks at the courthouse and inmates and people that just didn't have those comorbidities, right. And they weren't old enough.
Right.
So it made no sense, right?
A tall, skinny black guy who's a nurse doesn't need the vaccine more than a slightly overweight 73-year-old person.
Well, my parents aren't overweight.
Well, I don't know. I was just saying. I was just trying to make up the least offensive comorbidity. I'm sorry.
I'll tell you what. I mean, honestly, it doesn't matter who it was, or it wasn't a racial issue. What it was you have a 25 or 27-year-old law clerk at the courthouse, whether it's a male or a female,
Or black or white.
Right. Or whatever it is. So and they have no comorbidities, and it was just a general sweep of, well, let's get certain people vaccinated before the ones that we knew as the vulnerable population. So it didn't make any sense, and people called me crazy. Because all my lawsuits are crazy, right? But now they're starting to make sense. So now everybody's backpedaling.
Right. And I know you've had, success with some other lawsuits that you were talking about. For example, not only were you looking for access to the vaccine for those who are vulnerable, but also you want to know, why are we forcing vaccines on people who don't want it?
Right.
And what happened with that lawsuit?
Okay, so I'm not participating in the vaccine mandate lawsuit.
Okay.
I am doing the mask mandate lawsuit against Clark County School District.
Right, and that was the third one, so maybe I'm getting my stuff mixed up.
It's okay.
So tell me about the mask lawsuit for the kids, because I teach. Right. And I see the kid. I mean, we've all seen it before, whether you're talking about Gavin Newsom with Magic Johnson, or you're talking about Biden walking around without a mask, and then he wears a mask when the camera comes on. They talk about at the Capitol building, all the people who are instituting these things are walking around the Capitol building without masks as soon as the cameras go up, or when C-SPAN turns the cameras on, all of a sudden everybody's masked. It's like a joke, but the joke is on our kids. Because they're literally wearing them 7 hours a day. They're not getting the cameras are off, let me take off my mask.
Right.
7 hours a day, and they're becoming dependent on it. It's been over 2 years, or approaching 2 years now, and it's almost a way of life. You see things where the kids think they're more attractive, or other people are more attractive with the masks on. These kids already were scared of cameras, and really shy and awkwardly shy. And I think this has just exacerbated the problem, and I really see it. And it's not even something that you could touch. It's just feeling of loneliness among the kids. And I'm sure that's what you're trying to address most, I hope.
Well, obviously the adverse psychological effects that you talked about.
That's what I'm most concerned about.
Yeah, the adverse psychological effects. But if you think about it, I have teenagers at home, okay? So teenagers, like you said, they don't want their photographs taken, right? They're in that age where they're very insecure about their looks. They're growing into their looks. But the bigger concern is elementary school kids, right? And because you teach, you understand that, elementary school children, it's all about emotions, and it's all about when they learn.
And learning to read or speak. You got to see people's lips move.
Exactly. So, and it's a heartbreaking case. It really is.
Literally.
Truly a heartbreaking case. And the fact that I have to fight this case for children it's baffling.
And then you look at a country like Sweden, who never closed the schools, never had children ever wear a mask, and there's absolutely no difference in the results.
Absolutely.
We have other studies where one school district has the mask and one doesn't. It's not a negligible. It's the same thing. It's this.
Right.
I don't understand why they want to do this, because, again, if we go to the dry cleaner and we're going to comply, you go into the dry cleaner and then you come out and you take that. These kids are literally
wearing masks.
And these kids are disgusting.
Yeah.
Every kid has a runny nose. Every kid is spitting on the mask. The things are like a sopping wet washcloth by the end of the day. It can't be healthy.
It's not healthy.
So and that's going on from the adverse psychological effects, what other effects have you noticed or pointed out?
I've had parents send me pictures of their children with impetigo, which, is it's almost like zits on your face.
And kids are already having problems.
Right, they're already having.
Exactly.
The teenagers,
and nothing,
puberty.
Anything that's making it worse.
Absolutely. And then you have the kids that, they're wearing the same mask for, 3-5 days. Right. Those masks are not supposed to be.
3-5 weeks.
I was being conservative, But, you know, I mean, if you look at the backseat of my car, right, I've got masks all over my car.
Right.
So my kids just, I drop them off at school, they grab one of those masks. Who knows how long it's been
and
there?
you've
It's
been
been there for 2
stepping on
years.
them and everything else, and we've been sneezing and coughing on
Exactly.
them.
It's a joke. It's a joke. Johnny, it's an absolute joke. But, you know, aside from making a joke out of it, at the end of the day, there is a real serious issue.
Indeed.
You know, and it is. It's. I think that is the most heartbreaking case that I've had to litigate.
And where does it stand now, the lawsuit?
We are in the Ninth Circuit, so our opening briefs are due in April.
Jeez. By then, coronavirus is going to be gone.
I know.
I mean, how can
it's
they
brutal.
let our kids go to, I mean, I know I'm just repeating myself,
Right.
but I'm just seeing the kids in the masks all day.
All day.
And we're going to wait till April? I mean, are you
Well,
ready
that's just my opening brief, you know, and then you know, Clark County School District and the state get to do their opening brief, and then we have reply briefs, and I'll probably, if I get oral arguments, it's not going to be till September,
And that's a whole nother school year
and that's
away.
a whole other issue.
All right. Well, let's get the reason that you have on your website for running. Do you have the tape of her campaign stump? All right. This is you announcing, or shortly after you announced your candidacy for Attorney General. Play tape.
The radical left is burning down our country and attacking Jews in the streets, and Ilhan Omar is fanning the flames. I'm Sigal Chattah, an Israeli-born lawyer running to be America's #1 conservative attorney general. I'll stand up to Ilhan Omar and take her team to court for defunding our police, opening our borders, and teaching our kids to hate each other based on the color of their skin. I need your help. The left is pouring money into this seat so they can put more criminals on the streets. Can you chip in $25 right now? If enough patriots come together, we'll be able to build a grassroots campaign necessary to stop Ilhan Omar in her tracks. It's time that we put strong female lawyers like myself forward to make our case.
That was not a question. Thank you.
She's going to hate it if this message goes viral. Thanks for your support, and God bless America. My name is Sigal Chattah, and I approve this message.
All right, so we're about to get into your biography and talk about you growing up in Israel and everything else. But my one question, I mean, it's a very moving, enthusiastic. I mean, even our producer started getting pumped up. But why are you calling out Ilhan Omar? Why don't you call out, Aaron Ford?
Okay, so when that video was shot, it was shot over the summer, and I'm going to take you back to last summer, and it was literally Jews were being attacked on the streets, and as a candidate that is Jewish, not regardless of whether I was running or not,
right?
That was a serious issue for me, and the problem is that we have the left and the progressives, and whether you call them the jihad squad, and they okay it and they rubber stamp it and they perpetuate it with their narrative, and that was one of the issues that I had when I made that
right,
video.
and that was at the time that, especially in New York, I saw.
Right.
It seems like New York is the best example of all of these, whether you're talking about anti-Asian hate or anti-Semitic hate, or anytime one of these things come up, and yet it never seems to really get addressed by the progressives who are looking to stop the hate. All of a sudden, it depends on who the perpetrator was. If it's for Christ's sake, Whoopi Goldberg just said that, the Holocaust wasn't about racism because it was white people and white people.
Which is ridiculous.
It's the it's the craziest thing I've ever heard. And she's culturally appropriated a Jewish name in order to become more shockingly mainstream. How did you feel about that?
Well, Whoopi Goldberg is really a result of a lot of the I want to say the Democratic Jew positions, the apology. I call them, I call it the Shtetl Syndrome. You know what a Shtetl is?
No, and I know my Jewish vernacular, but I don't know that one. I know what a shtick is.
I call it the Shtetl Syndrome, where really, in Eastern Europe and in Russia, Jews lived in little villages called shtetls. And, and they were trained not to make too much noise and not to be so boisterous. And, so it's really the Shtetl mentality. And that Shtetl mentality is kind of ingrained in Democrat Jews to this day.
Right.
Where, if you take Israelis are completely different than the American Jewry.
Right.
Okay. I'm an Israeli. I am fire and brimstone all day.
Right.
Okay. I will fight to defend that. But the American Jews, they're very apologetic.
Right.
How could you have Whoopi Goldberg say something like that and not have absolute outrage?
And as I got more,
Absolute outrage.
As I learned more about politics, and I'm realizing that they believe, just like the African Americans or the Hispanics, the Democrats believe that the Jews are in their corner, and it just doesn't compute with me because all this anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian type of rhetoric that's coming from the Democratic Party, I don't understand how a real Jewish person would be able to support that.
It's the Shtetl mentality. Don't make too much noise. But Israelis, are different. Israelis tripled the size of the country in 6 days in 67. They fight for what they believe because Israelis understand that if Israel is wiped off the map,
right,
that's it.
And then what do you even think about Whoopi naming herself as a stage
I think it's a
name,
joke.
Goldberg?
I think it's a joke.
And then another pundit I heard on one of the lamestream media saying it's a testament to show that, how strong Whoopi is with the Jewish community, when in any other circumstance it would be called cultural appropriation.
100%.
And if you're thinking you're going to, it's like when the Black Lives Matter guy released a tweet saying he's noticing all these white people lying about their race on their application, and he had to delete it because it's showing that white people are like wanting to be black because it gives you an advantage, which is racism. And then,
right,
a lot of Democrats will complain about, a Jewish name will get a better spot in line at the bank or something. And Whoopi Goldberg tries to cash in on that. And then they're saying that that's a testament to her solidarity with the Jews. And I think
that's
it's more
a joke. It's a joke. It's really a joke. I mean, how do you have a show and say that the Holocaust wasn't about racism? I mean,
right.
are you sniffing glue? What are you doing backstage?
Well, every document that Hitler wrote, he says
right,
the Jewish race,
exactly,
the Jewish race, the
exactly,
Jewish race.
Yep.
But it's not good enough because some Jews are pale-skinned?
No, I don't know.
Because there's a lot of dark-skinned Jews as well.
I am. I'm half Yemenite,
there you go, right.
I mean, my mother's Yemenite. My mother is, which is the Gulf of Aden is right there in Africa.
Right.
So, I mean, my mother's family is very, very dark.
And there's plenty of black Jews in
yeah,
northeastern Africa and stuff like
the
that.
Ethiopian Jews, and
So it's not really just a white thing.
No, not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. It's a joke.
All right. So speaking of which, let's go into your history. You were born in Israel, and you moved here when you were 14.
Yes, in
so
1989.
Tell me about the difference between being a 13-year-old in Israel and a 15-year-old in Las Vegas, Nevada. I mean, that's got to be pretty stark comparisons.
It's amazing, and and I didn't realize the differences until I became an adult. Okay, so because 14 years old, what do you care about?
Right.
You care about your friends, you care about going out, but when I tell people stories like, we used to have these teeny bopper nightclubs, right, for like teenagers.
Right.
You know where they were held? Just, you have any idea where our teeny bopper nightclubs were held?
The VFW?
No, bomb shelters.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Every house...
Growing up in old school Nevada.
I'm talking about in Israel.
Israel.
So, we would meet up, and our hangout spots were bomb shelters.
And you have to have bomb shelters, I'm guessing,
everywhere.
multiple
Everywhere.
in every block.
Right. So, and every block, every house has a bomb shelter. Every apartment building has a bomb shelter.
Because it's a way of life.
So, that's the way of life. I used to watch my uncle, who was in a band, play, and we would go down in the bomb shelter, and that's where, and when you're a teenager living in that situation, you're not really cognitive of how absurd that is. Right? And then, I moved to Las Vegas, and, Las Vegas, where did we hang out? Wet and Wild back in the day. day. I mean, my parents would drop me and my friends off at the circus with, money, roll of quarters, and go play, and call us when you want us to pick you up.
Right.
So it was a totally different life. I wasn't crazy about Las Vegas when I first moved here, obviously.
Because you probably missed home.
Of course. And, but I grew to love it, and by the time I reached university at UNLV, I mean, that was it. There was no turning back.
Right. Now you're American. Right.
Now I'm American,
Las
I mean, I didn't serve in the IDF. I mean,
that was my first, when I was talking to you yesterday and you were telling me a little bit about this, I said, how old are you? Because I was wondering what would happen when you were 19, and you're a firecracker. So
I did not serve in the IDF. I'm not allowed to go to Israel for more than 60 days. Otherwise I'll get drafted. So,
really?
Yeah. So every time I've gone back, I've gone for a month at a time. Now if they draft me, I mean, they'll just release me because I can't walk from point A to point B.
Stop.
I mean? Yeah.
But tell me more about Israel then. I mean, that's super interesting. Did you ever have an air raid siren go off?
Oh, yeah.
So tell us about that. Did your teachers carry AK-47s like I see in the memes?
Well, I mean, I shot on an M16 short. I do go back. I like to go shooting. And, there are certain things that nobody will understand, right? Right after Oslo, I was in Israel. And I used to go every year when I was in high school and in college and, before law school and after law school. And after Oslo, I don't know if you remember this, but there was a lot of violence in Israel. Bombs were going off on buses.
Right.
And
I just remember when I was a kid, and I grew up in New York, so I definitely had some Jewish influence because there's a lot of Jewish people in New York. But, there was always something going on. The whole thing was peace in the Middle East. And again, I'm 14, so I'm not really paying attention.
I'm a little bit older than you because I was
a little
bit older than you.
Months.
But
we're the same age.
We are.
Yeah.
So, so when the Oslo Accords were signed, we all thought that that's it, we're going to have peace.
Right, and when you talk about the Oslo Accords, forgive me because I'm not certain that I know what you're talking about. Is that when you guys gave up part of Israel to the Palestinian Authority?
Right, that was part of the Oslo deal, yes.
It was kind of a negotiation to try to stop, bring peace to the Middle East.
Bring peace in the Middle East, and Bill Clinton and Yasser Arafat and Rabin and everybody was, hunky-dory.
Right.
So I go to Israel after the Oslo Accords, and I'm in Tel Aviv, and I drive in Israel like no problem, and I'm stuck in traffic, and I can't understand why I'm stuck in traffic, and I find out that a bomb tore through a bus in Tel Aviv, and that's why I'm stuck in traffic in Tel Aviv.
Right.
So whenever I go to Israel, and I want to tell you, to this day, if there's a bus stopped by me, it's like anxiety. Right? Because, granted...
Well, I remember the pictures of those red double-decker buses blowing up in Israel.
Torn, shredded. So, so these are things that, you explain it to people, and nobody understands, imagine every time you pull up next to a bus here in the U.S., you don't know, is it going to blow up or not?
Right. And I'm getting anxiety recalling the red photos of the red buses, and you're driving by them. Body
and
parts.
It's crazy. And so, those are experiences that nobody will ever be able to relate to.
Right.
And those are just experiences because that's the part of the world that I come from.
Right. And then you take it back 2 more generations and you talk about the Holocaust.
Right.
And, and where we have I'm guessing dozens, if even that, survivors anymore because, we're losing our
they're getting
older
old.
people. Right.
They're getting old.
Very old, right.
Yeah.
So we're starting to lose connection, and you talk about the American Jew, is a little bit more disconnected from the plight of the Israeli Jew.
Right.
And maybe this is the same thing with the Holocaust. People, we're comparing everything to the Holocaust.
Right.
And I mean, and then now people are saying we shouldn't compare anything to the Holocaust. And I think the singular thing that we could compare to the Holocaust is what's going on in China with the
Uyghurs.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And that's the only thing you're taboo from even comparing it.
You're not allowed to talk about the Uyghurs.
Right, and then Gina Carano gets fired from Disney because she made a very innocent meme or something, and then you have Whoopi Goldberg doing this, and she gets suspended 2 weeks, and she's screaming bloody murder that she can't believe this injustice is happening to her.
It's insane. The double standard and the hypocrisy is just mind-blowing.
Right. I mean, I don't want to see Whoopi get canceled.
Right.
But I don't want to see Joe Rogan get canceled either.
Exactly.
I want to know that Whoopi thinks this crap. Because now I can form a proper opinion. If I want to shut her up, and if you want to watch Whoopi, go watch Whoopi.
Go right ahead. I'm
not going to watch her. I'm going to listen to Joe Rogan. We're all entitled to listen to whatever we want.
That's part of living in a fabulous country like ours.
That's crazy. So then you moved to Nevada. You did you go to high school here?
I did. I graduated from Valley High School in 1993.
Congratulations. And I graduated in 94. So that's what I mean when I say we're the
you're
same
like
age.
You're
like the cool older girl. You're 1 year old. I'm like, wow, she's a senior,
Yeah.
But, and then you went to UNLV. What did you study at UNLV? When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up? Did you always know you wanted to be a lawyer?
Well, I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer, okay? When I was at UNLV, it just naturally political science with an emphasis on Middle Eastern politics. And then graduated.
And so you know a lot about the Middle East. I mean, from Syria to Iraq to the Gulf War and everything that happened, Northeastern Africa.
Oh, yeah.
We should talk one day. Yeah. I'd love to learn.
More than we're talking now.
Yes. Or maybe we could record it. Right. You guys could join us for the tutelage on the Middle East. So, what was I saying? Oh, so you went to UNLV and you were already looking at law. And tell me about your experience at UNLV. I went to UNLV, but recently. So tell me about
I loved UNLV. UNLV back then was awesome.
Oh, this is the late 90s. So this is after Larry Johnson and Jerry Tarkanian.
Yes, 93 to 97 I was at UNLV.
But you were a junior when the UNLV won the championship.
No, I thought UNLV won the championship
in 1992.
89, no?
No, I mean a junior in high school.
Oh, a junior in high school,
yeah.
Because
I was a sophomore, and I remember UNLV playing Duke and everything. Were you a big basketball? Because you had to be a basketball fan in Las Vegas.
I remember the game, and I remember the victory, but, 1992, I was 17 years old. I was trying to hang out with my friends. And
I was a basketball player.
Yeah, well, there you go. I'm 5'1". I wasn't.
You're living up the block from UNLV, and I'm watching on the other side of the world with bated breath at Larry Johnson and Greg Anthony. It was very exciting for me.
Yeah.
So then what happened after you left UNLV?
So Las Vegas didn't have a law school. Nevada didn't have a law school.
We do now.
We do now.
The Boyd School of Law?
The Boyd School of Law.
And do you like them?
I don't know.
You don't work with them?
I don't work with them. I mean, I've met a few of the Boyd lawyers. My nephew graduated from Boyd, but yeah.
Did you like it?
I think he did,
You had a good experience? I've heard good things about him,
Yeah, I heard, that they've got a great writing program, I guess. Right. So I have a lot of friends that graduated from Boyd.
So you couldn't go to UNLV?
I couldn't go to UNLV. I went to Widener University in Harrisburg.
Beautiful. Pennsylvania, a little East Coast flavor.
Yes. And when I was in law school, I was 25, 26, and I decided that I wanted to save the world.
How's that going?
It's fantastic.
All right, continue.
We could go circle back to Oslo. I wanted to save the world, and the former Yugoslavia had fallen, in 95, and I had it in my head that I was going to go be a soldier for Amnesty International and save all the Serbian refugees, and, went to Switzerland, studied international law and human relations in Switzerland.
Wow.
Human relations, human rights. So, and like I said, I mean, I was, bleeding heart, just save the world, rainbows and unicorns, wanted to feed the kids.
Would you have considered yourself a liberal or a Democrat?
Absolutely,
at that time?
I was a Democrat.
So
yeah,
if you're
yeah.
under 30 and you're not a Democrat, you don't have a heart.
Right.
And if you're older than 30 and
Right.
you're not a Republican, you don't have a brain.
brain.
All right. And you're the classic example.
I was absolutely, I remember being in Geneva and, I wanted to save the kids in Darfur. I wanted to save the Serbian refugees. I wanted to free Tibet. I was just the typical, wide-eyed, just like I wanted to save the world. And,
right.
and I found out that the world doesn't work like that. I think what really triggered reality.
Did you listen to Neil
me.
Young?
I did not.
I did. I'll admit it.
I did not. But I think what really, really shocked me to the core is when I found out that in the former Yugoslavia, there was a huge scandal with the UN trafficking some of the girls. And it was just absolutely unbelievable to me. And I was like, wait a minute.
Right when you find out, Clinton's
Yeah.
giving the drug cartels
guns
or something,
right.
or
I
think it was Obama. But you find out about these things.
You find out, and and when you're 20, you're in your 20s, you find this out, and you're like, wow, what they're teaching me in school doesn't correlate with the real world.
Right. Well, and that brings up just a current event, what's going on in Ukraine right now. And then you have the New York Times, which in the 40s or the 30s, they were talking about how the Holocaust was a myth.
Right.
They were publishing what a great guy Stalin was. So, they've got a history of taking the liberal bent and really fudging the truth.
Right.
And just this week, they came out with a report saying that they're expecting a false flag attack on Russia, so Russia can use that to attack. And it seems like they're getting so mixed up in their lives that they're starting to trip over themselves.
Right.
I just want your opinion on, since you're so educated, I know it's not the Middle East, but it's definitely in the vicinity. How do you feel about the United States getting involved in these things, protecting Ukraine's border when our border is a sieve, and the politics of, is Putin a bad guy, or if you're against going over there, then you're in Putin's pocket, and what do you think we should do, and how do you feel about the coverage we've had for this?
Look, Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union states are a mess, okay? And I think that is the nicest way I could say that.
They have been ever since 91 or whenever that was.
Yeah, they have been ever since, the Soviet Union broke up, and whether it was Yugoslavia or whether it was the Czech Republic or, they've been a mess. I don't think that the United States needs to get involved between Russia and Ukraine.
We don't have any interest there.
Well, look,
Hardcore
Russia
assets.
has petroleum, and there's always going to be an interest. Anytime there's petroleum, there's always an interest, okay? Which is really ironic because you have the Democratic Party that's talking about clean jobs and new clean jobs and build back better, and,
Well, we're fighting over oil in Russia.
And that's what I think really this is about. This is all about petroleum. It's always been about petroleum.
The whole Middle East conflict over the past 50 years.
It's always about petroleum. You think
and we're turning off pipelines and turning theirs on.
Exactly.
It
doesn't make sense. And there's, like I said, the reality doesn't correlate the narrative that they're selling you.
Right. And then you hear about, backroom deals. I think finally we're on YouTube, but I'm allowed now to talk about Hunter Biden. If we talked about Hunter Biden 12 months ago, we'd be yanked off the air. But he's got deals with the Ukraine. He was on the board. He was getting, that $1 million a year with Burisma. Then you also talk about diamonds and payoffs from the mayor, the figurative mayor of Moscow, some woman. So if Biden indirectly has his hand in the Ukraine and in Russia, I'm starting to feel like that's got to be playing some
Oh,
strings behind the
absolutely.
scenes.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, and again, we could go back to Burisma and how, you know, it's all a con, it's all pay for play. And the problem that we've got in the United States is that Americans are not educated about these things, unfortunately.
That's why I'm here.
Okay, and they're not educated about these things, and if they were, and you know, I mean, over the summer, you know, there was the incident with the Armenians. You know, I mean, also the Azeris and, you know, the Armenians, and it's all about interest in petroleum, okay? And the Turks and everything. I mean, it's just, there's so many bad actors in there. And Americans
Right.
are just not educated.
Right.
They are not educated about the real stories behind
Like
it.
the drug cartels that are literally 2
Walking
miles
over,
in
right.
on the other side of the border.
100%.
Or these criminal. I mean, you know.
They're criminals.
these
Yes, they're
and
criminals.
they're world leaders
Right.
who are criminals. You know.
Absolutely. Our borders are wide open. And, you know, and it's insane.
It's scary.
It's insane. You know, they want to protect Ukraine's borders, but what's going on with America's borders?
Right. And I literally pray about what's going to happen. You know, in the coming years, when you have so many people coming over, there's just bound to be one bad apple that's actually pretty intelligent and could put a plan together. You know, you get one of these lone wolf attacks, there's nothing you can do
No.
to protect ourselves.
No.
And we're catching Yemenis and all kinds of different
Right.
people from all over the world coming over. It really scares me. All right. So you've been a lawyer. You came back from Pennsylvania?
Came back from Pennsylvania.
Always the plan to come back and settle back in Las Vegas?
Nope.
Or
Nope.
you were playing
Actually,
it by
well, other than, you know, my ideal,
Worldwide
you know,
excursion.
world, you know,
And is that why you
after
go-
saving Tibet and, you know.
I
and,
was doing the math thinking you should have been a lawyer for like 25 years, and I saw you on your website it's 20 years.
Yeah,
Is that because
yeah.
for 5 years you were
Well,
standing
I
alone?
actually, I also took 2 years off. When my son was born, I did a little maternity leave, took a couple of years off to be home with
Well, if
him.
Pete Buttigieg can do it, Sigal Chattah can
I
do it.
would hope so. I would hope so. So I did that, and you know,
Is he back from his maternity leave?
I don't know.
Paternity leave?
Paternity leave. I don't know. You know, I mean, that's they like
He
doing
said
that.
something about 0 traffic deaths, so I think he is back.
He might be.
Yeah, he hasn't fixed the supply chain. Kamala hasn't fixed the border.
Nobody's fixed
All right, I'm
anything
sorry,
on that
I
side.
got distracted. So continue.
So, yeah, I mean, I've been practicing for over 20 years, and you know, I trial lawyer. I love it.
So
It's
you
the
go
best.
up and you argue.
Absolutely.
You're not there making backroom deals with
No.
insurance companies. You're
no,
going to court
I am
and saying.
in the courtroom, savage as all hell.
So give me a little story. Give me a Sigal Chattah story from the courtroom where the whole gallery said, "Come on, I just struck a
It's
point."
not, you know,
Tell
it's
me that
not
story.
like that.
Tell me that story.
You want me to tell you, I mean, about cases that I've done?
Tell me one exciting story. It doesn't have to be about anything in particular.
I mean, look, before COVID, you know, I had a very, very sad case.
Okay.
It was a 26-month-old baby that fell into the pool, or was taken into the pool. The jury never figured that one out. Okay. And he drowned, and he was in a vegetative state. And that was, you know, I won the trial.
What do you mean you won? Who were you defending?
I
or
was
prosecuting?
actually defending the one of the people that owned the properties. Okay.
Right.
And the mother neglected to keep an eye on her kid, and the mother sued, you know, a series of defendants.
Right, you turn your
Right.
ankle on somebody's property, you sue the property like it
Exactly.
was their fault.
So it was, to this day, I think that is probably the case that really
Sits with you?
Yeah, sits with me, because the trial was horrendous. You know, it was, you
How
have a
so?
26-month-old. By the time it got to trial, he was 6.5 years old in a
Just like
vegetative
we're talking
state.
about these.
You know, I mean, it was absolutely terrible. It was the first time that I cried in front of a jury. You know, I mean, everybody was crying.
Right.
Everybody was crying. The judge was crying. Everybody was crying. And, you know, and that's a case that, yes, you know, look, I won. I got a unanimous verdict in 30 minutes. It was an unbelievable win, but you realize that, okay, so I won the case,
Right.
but this kid lost his life.
Right.
So, so these are
Right,
things
right.
that stick with you.
Right.
Because as a lawyer, I'm trained to, it's
Go
a
for the
war.
W,
It
right.
is a war, okay? The courtroom, the only thing that stops it from being a real war is a judge that sits there and tells you, slow down or,
Right. Right.
settle down. But, and that's how I'm trained. I'm trained to be a trial lawyer. I'm trained to be a warrior. And you can't change that. I'm 47 years old. I doubt I'm going to ever change.
Yeah, well, I'd really look forward to seeing you debate.
Oh, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
I mean, those are lawyers. Sometimes you get some dummy politicians, right?
Right.
But the AG race, you
Oh,
get
yeah.
a couple of lawyers. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
you should
Oh,
be able
yeah.
to get a pretty good debate, right?
Yeah.
You talked about the lawsuit in order to make vaccines accessible to the people who need them most. You talked about the lawsuit regarding mask mandates in schools. Do you have any other lawsuits going? And I know that you worked or are working with Joey Gilbert. Is that considered a slate? Are you working on lawsuits with him, or are you guys just friends who support each other? Tell me about your relationship with Joey.
So my relationship with Joey is we are co-counsels on a case. We just resolved Calvary Chapel Lone Mountain, which was the case that everybody knows me as the Jew who saved Christmas.
Right.
So that was one of our first cases. Our first case was actually on behalf of small businesses during the shutdown and the discrimination between essential and non-essential businesses.
Like them closing a True Value Hardware, but not a Home Depot.
Exactly. So that was really the first case that Joey and I collaborated on together.
Had you known him before
No.
that, or that's
No.
kind of what introduced each other?
That's what, believe it or not, Michelle introduced me to Joey.
Michelle
Michelle Fiore introduced me to Joey. And, I was getting phone calls because people just know that I've got a big mouth and I've got,
And you're articulate.
and
You're
I've
a big mouth, but you're articulate.
I've got chutzpah, we'll call it, okay?
I know what that means.
You know what chutzpah means?
Yeah, you got heart.
And, fearless. I'm this fearless attorney. So, and it was just one thing after the other, and I was getting phone calls, and I was like, man, I've got practice. How am I going to do this? And Michelle told me, there's this guy up north that has already filed a lawsuit against Sigal on hydroxychloroquine. So I'm like, who's that guy?
Right.
So I called him up, and I said, listen, apparently I'm your counterpart down south.
Right.
So, we filed probably 3 or 4 lawsuits, and we didn't even meet in person yet.
Really?
Yeah. And it was purely collaborative, and I liked where his head was at. We were on the same page, and we just collaborated together, and it was fantastic.
Match made in heaven?
It was. You get, 2 crazed lawyers and that believe in the Constitution and believe in protecting people's liberties, and that's how true collaboration starts.
Right, and then you were able to succeed with that Calvary
Chapel.
Chapel. I go. Your law office is right by our church.
Right.
Calvary Chapel,
Calvary
Las
Chapel,
Vegas.
right.
And there's Calvary Chapel, Red Rock, and I know
Correct.
they're all over the
They're
world.
all over,
They're
yes.
church planting in South and Central America.
Right.
Very good. What I was going to ask you, so now there's been this new thing, and I've heard Joey do it. I don't know. I might have heard that you might have done it. I know somebody else did it, talking about treasonous acts by people such as Fauci or Biden or Sigal for, withholding monoclonal antibodies for Florida, or outlawing hydroxychloroquine, which, without getting too into the details,
Right.
is the delivery system for zinc to be intracellular, which is very important. And it's a safe drug and it's being outlawed. And I've heard some people say these people should be tried to treason and maybe even hung. Mm-hmm. I mean, is that something that you agree with? What do you think about that rhetoric? Or do you think it's not rhetoric, it's the truth?
Well, first of all, let me just preface this with I barely pulled a C+ in biology, so I am not touching any of the yeah, I that's not my shtick. But here's the reality. Look, treason is a crime in this country. There is punishment for treason in this country. There are federal laws and punishment guidelines. So if somebody is charged with treason and convicted, then the punishment has to fit the crime. I don't write the punishment, the sentencing guidelines.
Right. But law. I mean, I'm just saying, we're talking about the rhetoric of, using the Holocaust as an example too often, it waters it down. Just like racism, you call everybody a racist, eventually people are like,
right.
whatever,
Whatever.
Right. So, I mean, do you think this is just rhetoric? People saying, oh, I don't like what he did, we're calling it treason? Or, is there a legal defense to say that if you're, withholding life-saving medication from people, you could consider that treason?
Well, I don't know that it's treasonous just because the discretion that is allowed by an executive, if you
raise the speed limit and if somebody dies, you're not going to get arrested for murder because you raised the speed limit.
Exactly. And the reality of it is, look, every crime, okay, regardless of whether it's treason, whether it's possession, whether it's whatever it is, right, has a very strict definition to that, okay? If the definition fits, and like I said, if there's a charge, an indictment, and a conviction, then the punishment is in the sentencing guidelines.
I mean, I was saying on an earlier broadcast that I feel like people are saying that more to get attention, like to get that headline. Oh, they think that Biden should be charged for treason, and maybe the Review Journal will,
I think it's being misused. I think it is being misused, and I think they started misusing that with Trump.
Right.
I really do think, and the problem is that, when the Democrats misuse legal terms like that, they don't like it misused back at them.
Right.
And that's an issue.
Then you go back to the whole hypocrisy.
Right, exactly, because to me, what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
All right, well, let me ask you a couple of questions. I know there's certain things that you're really passionate about, and I'm going to get into your, hopefully your competitor is going to be Aaron Ford, and I'm going to try to show the differences between yours and his style. But really quick, before we get into that, I just want to give you about 30 seconds to address each of these issues. First of all, you got a real strong affinity for the Second Amendment. And as an attorney general, first, like I had Stan Hite on, and he said something about, he won't enforce a non-constitutional law. And then I asked him about, he's running for sheriff. And then I asked him about, well, what about some attorney generals are not prosecuting crimes, or they're lessening the charges to petty larceny when it really should be, grand larceny or whatnot. And he says that there's ways to instead then do the charges for conspiracy to commit a crime, which the AG can't ignore. Was he right in that, or would the attorney general, say it's Aaron Ford, be able to just say, no, I'm not going to prosecute conspiracy either?
Well, in Nevada, one of the beautiful things about the way Nevada is set up is that Nevada has concurrent jurisdiction from the AG's office. So if a district attorney decides not to prosecute an offense, I as AG can step in and prosecute in any county, in any municipality, in any court.
So you're the boss as an AG?
I'm the top cop. I'm the top prosecutor.
So no matter what's going on.
No matter what's going on. So I do think, though, what has happened with this AG is that, prosecutors, when they have the top cop who is not prosecuting, it stifles them from prosecuting.
Right.
And I think it is a security issue, right? I mean, you become insecure about how you're going to be perceived by the public if the top cop doesn't even prosecute.
Of course, and you lead by example, I would hope.
Absolutely.
What do you do, because you're not a legislator, so what do you do if you have a law that you believe is unconstitutional? What if they outlaw bump stocks and then, the governor starts saying, hey, go find people with bump stocks? And just as an example, I'm assuming, pretend you think that outlawing bump stocks is unconstitutional.
Right.
What do you do as AG?
Well, as AG, just like any district attorney, I have prosecutorial discretion. Okay. The same way that a lot of district attorneys, and I'm not only referring to Clark County or Washoe County's district attorney, district attorneys all around the country and AGs all around the country have prosecutorial discretion. So if I choose not to prosecute, then I don't prosecute.
So while I might not agree with the Attorney General of New York not prosecuting, shoplifting or whatever the example might be, they're within their legal right to not enforce those laws.
Absolutely, and every district attorney has prosecutorial discretion. One thing that I always say, because I am going to be a very hawkish AG, okay, and because to me public safety is primary concern,
paramount.
Okay, but I will never prosecute a crime that I can't convict.
Right.
Okay. I think prosecutorial misconduct is disgusting. We see it everywhere. But I, as an AG, will never prosecute a crime I can't convict.
I got you. And then back to the Second Amendment. I mean, how do you feel about the Second Amendment? And as an Attorney General, how would that reflect on your...
Well, I'm a huge proponent of the Second Amendment. First of all, I'm a single mother with 2 young kids. Nobody's going to come into my house and harm my kids.
It evens the playing field
I believe
if you have a gun.
It definitely does. I believe the castle doctrine is paramount. People have a right to protect themselves. And as AG, the reason why I think there is so much issues with the Second Amendment is because we don't have gun offenses being prosecuted, okay?
From illegal guns.
From illegal guns, correct.
Illegal possession of a firearm.
Exactly. So prohibited persons, those are not being prosecuted. A felon in possession of a firearm, those are often the first things that are dropped in a plea agreement. Exactly. So, but I'm a huge proponent of mandatory minimums for felon in possession of a firearm.
Right.
I'd like to see that. I don't want to make a 4-year term about that. But I'll tell you what, if you start making, just prosecute the crime. We don't prosecute the criminal. We prosecute the crime.
Right.
Okay.
And that's why I believe, more law. We keep adding laws, and I believe more laws means less justice.
Right.
Because that's when you get into prosecution. What's the word you just said?
Prosecutorial misconduct.
No, discretion.
Oh, okay.
Because if you have so many laws, you got to now decide, what am I going to concentrate on?
Right.
Or a racist cop or a bigoted cop or whatever can decide, who am I going to arrest for these particular crimes? But meanwhile, if we kept it super simple, then there's a crime, let's do it. But when you start having everything is against the law, from seatbelts to jaywalking, well, if your friend's jaywalking, we'll let it go. But if somebody you might not like is jaywalking, you can go get them. And I think that's what leads to the potential for racism or systematic types of discrimination. You also talk a lot about religion and the right to peacefully assemble. That kind of goes hand in hand. What's your...
Well, look, I'm a constitutionalist, okay? So the free exercise clause was why I took Calvary Chapel, why I decided to do that case with Joey. And look, I come from, in Israel, all religions can practice freely in Israel, okay? It's the only country in the world where you have mosques and churches and synagogues in one city.
Right, and we can get totally into it. But people don't realize there are Palestinians, there are Arabs that are in the government and running like counties and stuff like that. I mean, it's very diverse, the most diverse place in the Middle East.
100%.
And all the Arabs and Palestinians go to Israel for medical care and stuff when they're able to.
Absolutely.
Please continue.
But, but neighboring countries, the Coptic Christians were getting slaughtered, a few years ago in Egypt, and for being nothing other than being Christian. Okay, so I mean, and we saw it with the Syrians, and we saw it with the Armenians. We see it with the Armenians. We just saw it over the summer with the Armenians, And so to me, the right to free exercise is something that's so fundamental in this country that
or to a free people.
Right, to a free people. And the United States is the most free country in the world. So,
are we?
I think, like I said, I mean, it's paradise lost for now, but I think it's coming back. I'm very hopeful.
Your lips to God's ears. What about big government, big business versus mom and pop shops?
Well, I say that we saw during COVID the largest transfer of wealth from Main Street to Wall Street.
I say the same thing.
Okay, I think it is an absolute tragedy what happened to small businesses in our state, and there was no excuse for it. There was absolutely no excuse.
I have
for
conversations with people, and I'm a small business owner. And the whole thing is not just about whether Sisalak says we can open or have the masks, but it's the uncertainty of what our government is going to do next.
Right.
I mean, do we invest $20,000 in a marketing campaign when the next month they could be closing our doors or saying that everybody's going to be sick, you should be scared? I mean, even just inducing the fear into the public, which is our customers, affects our business. And
100%.
It's not tangible. It's not like I could sue them and say, hey, I know that there's 12 people who would have come here if you kept your mouth shut about a disease that's not really killing any children. It's the uncertainty. It's the whole way the big thing is working with the big business and the big government.
And I got to tell you, I mean, they've destroyed the American psyche. That's what they've done.
They're taking away our motivation, our innovation.
Absolutely. Why start a business when how are you going to sign a lease?
Right. For 5 years.
I mean, how do you sign a 5-year lease? And it affects everybody. It affects, business owners. It affects landlords. It affects everybody across the board. So...
And then you also talk about big pharma, prescription drugs, which obviously we're seeing, Fauci's got his thumb and, his wallet involved in a lot of these companies. And then, this disease comes or this virus comes and then everybody's getting rich off of it when we're not even 100% certain that some of these players were not involved in the mistake or purpose or leak or not. I mean, who knows what happened? And that's another problem that we don't know what happened. What's your views on, big pharma and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, I actually experienced the big pharma problem firsthand. A few years ago, I had a case involving a Henderson Municipal Court judge who overdosed off of, it was a fentanyl incest therapeutic sublingual spray.
So it was prescribed.
Yes.
It wasn't like bought in Mexico.
No.
Because I mean, we're hearing about kids who think they're popping a Loratab, and next thing you know, they're dead.
No, this was prescribed, and the company that created this, it was like a Banaka spray. You're old enough to remember what Banaka is, right?
Yeah, a little.
So it's it was a sublingual fentanyl.
You thought you were going to get that first kiss for like 2 years. You have to buy more Banaka because you ran out.
Right now, your first kiss. So it was a prescribed medicine, by a company called Incest Therapeutics. And a beautiful woman left 2 kids behind, overdosed on fentanyl. And this company was literally pitching it to doctors, giving kickbacks. All the board of directors were indicted in Massachusetts, and they're all doing time. So I'm not the most trustful person about pharmaceutical companies.
Again, you said you're not a biologist.
I mean, but you look at, the opioid epidemic, and the FDA approved all these opioid drugs, and, and the doctors lied. They said that these opioids were not
safe and not habit forming.
Yeah, they weren't habit forming. They, were not addictive, and, and look at this. I mean, we're 15 years into an opioid epidemic, and, and all that was done with a seal of approval of the FDA.
And again, you say, as you get older than 30 and you start seeing what's going on with these governments, with these big pharma, all this stuff, you realize that it's not really like the people who are creating these problems. It's the people we trust to solve these problems.
Exactly.
That's scary. And then you talk about the good old boys.
No, I hate the good old boys.
You're talking about kickbacks. You're talking about payoffs.
Right.
This, that, the other thing.
Right.
What have you seen, and what kind of experience do you have with that?
What have I seen? I've seen a lot. Everything. I litigated the World War weed case, which was the recreational marijuana licenses. If there was anything that would inspire me to become the Attorney General, was that case. Because that was Kickback City. The feds are still investigating it.
And outline it for the viewers who might not know what you're talking about.
So basically, what happened?
me.
There were recreational use licenses, retail dispensary licenses that were up for grabs. And they opened up the licensing process, and you had certain requirements that you had to meet when you, as an applicant.
And I wish I had this before. I had Stavros Anthony on, who sits on the council with the land use permits, and I was asking him about these rich people taking the monopoly of the
cannabis.
So
the
please.
cannabis industry was essentially what we saw was that it was Kickback City. People that didn't qualify, for licenses, got licenses, and they sold them for, $250 million, $500 million.
It's like buying the Raiders seat license and then just turning around and selling it to someone else.
It was just unbelievable,
Wow.
and these people should have never gotten these licenses. So I'm proud to say that I was on the right side of justice on that one. The feds are still investigating it, and I hope that we see some indictments because, to me, when I look at kickbacks and things like that, public corruption,
right?
Okay, it's always about who does it hurt. It hurts the small businessman,
right?
Okay, Johnny Brew wants to get a license to, for food trucks.
Open up a small little pot shop.
Exactly. And you don't know the right people, or you're not kicking up to the right people, or you don't hire the right attorney who knows how to do the kickbacks. And Johnny doesn't have a chance.
Right.
Okay.
And I know firsthand that if you look at the people who own the dispensaries, they're all the same people who were against the legalization because they're all in the medical field and everything else. And medical and tobacco, pharma and tobacco and alcohol didn't want marijuana to be legalized. But then once it was legalized, it's all the
Open
CEOs
season.
of these healthcare groups and doctors and lawyers who are the first ones in line to open it up. And now you'd say, if they didn't even qualify or they wanted their name off the application for the land use, well, then they just buy it for 5 times the price later on down the road, and they know that they're going to be locked in.
It's
got
ridiculous.
That dispensary on the corner of Rainbow and Flamingo. That's your prime and you're never going to close. And they make so much money. It makes me sick.
It is. It is very sickening, and and like I said, when you look at how World War Weed, and that's what the trial was called.
World War Weed. I got
it. That's what the trial was called, World War Weed. So when you look at it and you see the players, it's absolutely disgusting.
And what can you do as an AG in order to stop the big guy from squashing the little guy?
Indict.
When there's malpractice.
Well, when there's clear public corruption, I will not hesitate to investigate and indict. I say, transparency, investigation, and indictment. That's the 3 things I'm running on.
On the theme of David versus Goliath, on the big guy versus the little guy, how do you feel? I keep hearing things like, for example, Joe Lombardo is the shoo-in for the Republican candidate because he's got all the money, he's got all the support. Even though if you look at his social media feeds, everybody's like, you're a piece of garbage and I hate you and you're not a real Republican. But yet still people are telling me it's a done deal, whether you're friend Joey Gilbert or you're talking about somebody who's just rising the ranks like Fred Simon, or you're talking about a former senator and Dean Heller. They're saying all these guys are out, it's got to be Joe Lombardo, which blows my mind. But then on the other hand, you got Adam Laxalt running against Sam Brown. And they almost raise the same amount of money, but they're still saying Sam Brown has no shot. Adam Laxalt is the establishment guy. Why is it that all these political pundits, and I'm not new enough to know, I know on ESPN, I've been watching sports my whole life. I know when John Madden tells me the Raiders are definitely going to win, that don't mean a damn thing. The Raiders, they might not win.
Right.
But these people are telling me, hey, follow the money. The establishment guys are always going to win. How do you feel? I don't even know where you stand. I don't know if you're a David or Goliath. I mean, I'm guessing against Ford, you're a David versus Goliath. But I don't know. I just heard we finally have another challenger for Republican AG. Are you a David or Goliath? And do you think, from your experience in observing politics, that somebody like Joey Gilbert or, anybody but Joe Lombardo can win?
I hate the establishment. I'll be very honest. I think the establishment is how Nevada got into this situation. I'm not a fan of the establishment. I always, in my nature, root for the underdog.
Right. I think most people do.
I do root for the underdog, and I think, the establishment. Look, as far as the Republican Party is concerned, I think people are sick of establishment. Okay, I think you see that with independents. I think part of Trump's success was the fact that he was not establishment. Right. He was the anti-establishment. When I first came onto the scene, they called me the insurrectionist, right? They said that I am an insurgent candidate. Okay, now it's evolving. People are starting to watch Yellowstone. They're calling me the Beth Sutton of the Republican Party. So, people want honesty. People want truth and veracity from their representatives because they're sick of being lied to. And that goes across the board. It goes across to independents, Democrats. I think Democrats are a little bit slower off the curve. They're, they are.
I just saw a report saying that Democrats watch Fox News more than they do CNN or MSNBC.
Yeah, but I want to tell you that I think that, you look at the Culinary Union and when I was driving down to First Friday last night, they were protesting the Fertitas. Why didn't they fight for their jobs so hard?
Right.
Like they're trying to fight the Fertitas.
Right, because that's not what the union tells them to do.
That's not what the union tells them to do.
Same thing with the teachers union.
Exactly.
Why aren't they fighting for less paperwork?
Exactly.
Because that's what they really want.
Right. So, but that's why I say they're a little slow off the block. But I think that the underdogs are really going to sweep through. Everybody's sick of these establishment candidates.
Well, and then when you you talk about the biggest transfer of wealth in the history of the world, which I say all the time on the air. You talk about the big guys and everybody with their kickbacks and this, that, the other thing. I also read somewhere that you say that Aaron Ford gave a $350 million contract to the law firm he had departed when he became AG. That's kind of like me becoming governor and then giving Infinity the Math Institute a $100 million education contract. Is that?
Oh yeah, you're right on the money.
Give me some details.
You're
what
absolutely.
happened?
So 6 weeks after Aaron Ford was sworn into office, he did open bidding on the opioid litigation, and this is very, very, very expensive litigation. And he said he abstained from the decision-making process, but at the same time, his former partner received the contract.
$350 million?
Yes. It was a $350 million. They just cleared $285 million, I believe, 2 weeks ago. Let me tell you, that's the gross amount of the settlement. Okay. Now, what his former law partner made is upwards of $60 million.
Yeah, I don't care if it's 1%.
Right.
1% of $300 million is $3 million.
100%. 100%. I agree with you.
Talking about 15%, you're talking about $45 million.
He made over $60 million. And it's not only that, the real travesty about the whole thing is that there was no transparency. And, we have 17 counties in the state of Nevada. He gave them a monopoly. And I'll tell you, Johnny, I've litigated, like I said, I litigated World War weed with the best attorneys in the industry on both sides.
Right.
Okay? There was absolutely no reason why the counties couldn't have been cut up and give some other attorneys, okay, a piece of the pie. I didn't have a dog in that race because I just don't do that type of litigation.
Right.
Okay. So that's, I don't do the mass tort litigation. But I'll tell you what, there are plenty of fantastic law firms that could have shared in that distribution.
Well, when you talk about being called the insurrectionist candidate, you're so good at leading me into the next thing. I wanted to contrast your style and the things you believe in with what your opponent, Aaron Ford, says and believes in. This is Aaron Ford talking about what happened on January 6th, just over a year ago today. Play tape.
Was a sudden, an attempt at least, at a sudden, violent, and illegal seizure of power from the government. Webster's dictionary, that's the definition of a coup. And if you disagree with that phraseology, here's another word that fits, insurrection. And we all know what that means. But if you ask me, you got to move to the T's in the dictionary for the best word to describe what we saw. And that's terrorism. We saw domestic terrorists who were attempting to overthrow our government for political philosophies.
All right, so I mean, here on the Johnny Bruce Show, we've said that January 6th, in our opinion, was the best example of a mostly peaceful protest, which obviously there were some people who did some things that they should pay for, but maybe not 5 years in solitary confinement, but that's a story for another day. But he talks about January 6th being a coup, an insurrection, which apparently is your nickname. Calling these
insurgent,
people,
not insurrection.
Well,
insurgent candidate, insurgent.
And terrorists. How do you feel about him using that kind of a language to describe what happened on January 6th? Do you agree that those people were terrorists or insurrectionists?
No, I don't think that they were terrorists, any different from what we saw on Las Vegas Boulevard and a cop getting shot during the BLM protests. I mean, there were more scorched stores downtown Las Vegas. I remember taking my kids down there after, things calmed down
a little bit.
And I was mortified because this was my city. This was right. You saw this firsthand. So you like I said, what's good for the goose is good for the
right.
gander.
Well, I mean, I do know that I think it was Oregon, they were locking the police door or the courtroom doors shut and then throwing Molotov cocktails in the windows to try to burn people and trap them inside.
They did that in Carson City. They did that at City Hall in Reno. I mean, so what do you call that?
But words are important. Even that, is that a coup or an insurrection? Attacking a federal courthouse with Molotov cocktails, is that the textbook definition of a coup or an insurrection? That may be terrorism, but I don't think it's a coup or an insurrection. Same thing with at the Capitol on January 6th. I thought a coup or an insurrection had an element of the military or an element of a political leader leading this and trying to take over. I've heard the candidate for sheriff, Assemblyman Tom Roberts, said something like, they took over the Capitol. When I feel like these words are hyperbolic, it was it was a riot. I'm not saying
right.
violence in it. I'm not
right.
trying to justify what they did.
Right.
But words have meanings. Do you think that was a coup?
You know what a coup looks like?
Please.
I mean,
you know what a coup looks like? And you have international
experience.
I
mean, when what we saw in Benghazi was a coup. Okay, what we saw,
what makes it a coup? What literally details make it a coup?
I think it would be I'm just.
Yeah, I didn't prepare
trying
for this question.
To define it, I would say it is probably the unlawful overthrow of a government would make it a coup.
Okay.
I mean, we see coup d'etats happen,
right.
not so much anymore, but coup d'etats happened in South America left and right in the 80s.
Right.
Okay. I mean, what happened in Cuba, that was a coup d'etat.
Right. You get the police on your side and then you take over the government.
They try to do that to Erdogan in Turkey a couple of years ago,
right.
where the press participated and he was kidnapping members of the media. So we know what coup d'etats look like. I know what a coup d'etat looks like. Okay?
So is a 3-hour riot a coup d'etat?
I don't think that was a coup d'etat. No, absolutely not.
And then I assume you're a Trump supporter. You've said so before.
I voted for him twice.
This is your competitor speaking about Trump. Play tape.
Listen, I have been saying forever that Donald Trump's dog whistles to his supporters were dangerous. From him saying that he would not commit to an orderly transition of power, to him saying that he wanted his people to go watch closely at the polls, which was a signal for voter intimidation, from him telling certain people to stand back and stand by, I knew what his intentions were and what they have always been. We've known this since this gentleman was a candidate, and frankly, since he was a civilian, rooting for racist philosophies. And
I mean, so there you go, continually saying Trump is using a dog whistle. I guess that's the word because he never says anything that they could say, look, he's actually a racist.
Right.
So they say he's using dog whistles, like only the real racist will understand what he's trying to say. How do you agree with that?
No, I don't agree with that. Not even a little bit. The problem is that the Democrat narrative is everything is racist, right? Encouraging poll watchers to ensure safe and fair elections is now a dog whistle. That's an embarrassment.
Right, for intimidation.
I can't believe that came out of an attorney general's mouth. That's baffling to watch.
And then he also refers to his Jewish brothers and sisters. You got that right? You got that ready? All right, play tape. This is special for you.
No, it's
great. Exercise of people who look like me and my Jewish brothers and sisters when he has said that there were good people on both sides of Charlottesville. Not to mention some of the idiotic policies that he has promoted over the course of his 4-year tenure. A new day is coming, and I call it hashtag J20, and I'm looking forward to that.
So as a Jewish American, are you offended by what happened with Trump regarding the statue controversy when he said there were good people on both sides, and he thinks that his Jewish brothers and sisters should be offended by Trump? Do you make that connection?
I can't even connect the dots on that. But what is more offensive to me is that somebody that is supporting BLM when BLM was flying Palestinian flags and saying "Free Palestine,"
and that was over the summer when you made that Ilhan Omar
absolutely.
Video.
And then he says Jewish brothers and sisters. I mean, Mr. Ford needs to understand that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, and saying Free Palestine and having Free Palestine flags, okay, at his parades, we'll call them, okay, is code word for kill the Jews in the Middle East. Right. So, I say you could be woke or you could be real, but you can't be both.
Right.
So pick a side.
Well, speaking of BLM, here's Mr. Ford speaking on that subject.
And at the end of the day, we have to do more than be reactive to these types of things and be proactive to ensure that everyone is treated fairly under the law. And this is proof positive of the fact that what Black Lives Matter protesters have been talking about is actual in our existence.
So there he's saying that we're proving Black Lives Matter's point. How do you feel about him using Black Lives Matter as a cudgel and trying to say this is proven that there's systematic racism against African Americans?
I have to tell you, I don't agree with that. When I see that Aaron Ford is such a proponent of BLM, and again, and like I said, the main mantra for BLM and what we saw is that they intersect with a pro-Palestinian movement. So it's hard for me to separate the BLM movement with the Kill the Jews movement.
And I have trouble separating BLM from the communist movement.
Right.
I mean, that's what I think of when I hear BLM. You think of Palestinians.
Exactly.
I think of communism.
Exactly. Look, I look at Aaron Ford and I see somebody who is so anti-police. Okay, he's anti-public
He's wearing a police
safety.
lapel.
It's amazing. That's amazing. But he's so anti-police. His redundant 2 pieces of legislation that he introduced in this last legislative session are amazing. Right? I mean, he introduced the Breonna Taylor Act and, the practices and oversight of police officers to completely redundant. You want to talk about dog whistle? Right. I mean, that's a dog whistle. Right. And I guarantee you that if he gets another 4 years, we're going to see that cops are going to lose their absolute immunity. And we're not going to have any cops.
Right. And this is what's happening in
Right.
San Francisco
This is
and
what's
New York.
happening. So if you want to talk about dog whistles, God, he can't stop whistling.
And then regarding, this is coming up now a lot as we're getting into the January 6th investigation, and people want to know, why aren't we investigating or even allowed to ask Nancy Pelosi or Mayor Bowser from Washington, D.C. about why they didn't implement the National Guard request that Donald Trump made for 20,000 National Guard troops, saying, we know that there's going to be a lot of people here, regardless of if it's BLM, we'll bring in troops,
right,
or if it's going to be my supporters, let's bring in troops to make sure everything is safe at the Capitol. And now everybody's asking, why wasn't there more safety? Why wasn't that approved? And, he just proves my point right here. I mean, it's the other side making my argument for me. Play tape.
You can juxtapose pictures of the preparation that law enforcement undertook in June of last year when Black Lives Matters, the peaceful protesters who were attempting to be there, to be sure they were accompanied by people who co-opted that message, some of which across the nation have been engaging in non-peaceful protests, and they should be addressed. But look at the juxtaposition of how they prepared with people, with officers who were dressed in tactical gear to the preparation to yesterday. And also look at the fact that people who gathered in our nation's capital last summer were tear gassed, were moved out of the way so that our president could have a photo op. When in the instance on last night, we didn't even see people being arrested for violating the curfew. And so again, recognizing the difference is one thing, defeating what we've been seeing is something entirely different, and we have to commit ourselves to that.
And
All right, so that's exactly what we were asking about, saying why wasn't there more protection there, and he's making that exact point for us. Why aren't we able to ask them? And if you're going to do an investigation, you've done investigations before. Why can't we talk to all the players, the major players in the investigation?
Because they don't want the transparency thing is a very big problem for them. Transparency is a huge problem for Democrats, and that's why they don't want investigations. Because when you start investigating, when people started investigating really what was going on with the COVID shutdowns, all of a sudden people got yanked off the air. There's so much suppression of these investigations that they don't like the truth, right? They don't want to hear the truth.
Whether coming from a journalist or
right.
a citizen.
And they the lack of transparency is really how the Democratic Party has continued to thrive.
And this last quote I got from him is, I believe, the true role of the Attorney General of the state of Nevada. Play tape.
It is up to this office, the Office of Attorney General, where our job is justice, to ensure that the Nevada family is protected in every aspect of our lives. I'm committed to doing that, and I appreciate and am blessed to be the one in the position right now to help us through this tumultuous time.
All right, and there you go. So the number one rule is to protect Nevada families. This was recorded a year ago. A year later, we find out that the year that came after this speech, our murder rate went up 75%. Crime is way up. We've been covering the schools. Kids are getting beat up in school. We're finding people are getting run over. Families are getting wiped out from street racing. What is your message to the people of Nevada that you would do differently than Aaron Ford?
Well, that's what happens when you have an attorney general that runs the attorney general's office like a public defender. I say, look, having a public defender is a fundamental right in this country, but that's not the position of the top cop. The top cop's position should be to ensure the safety, a refusal to prosecute habitual offenders, a refusal to hold people that are prohibited persons of possession of a firearm. That's what we see, and we see that trickle down onto our streets.
Right, and what about, say, homelessness and stuff like that? How can we get the whole broken window theory to, with you as an attorney general?
Well, I want to tell you that when I talk about prison reform, and criminal justice reform, the major issue that I have is mental health in this state. And one of the biggest embarrassments that we should be embarrassed about in the state of Nevada is that we don't have any long-term mental health facilities. And it's disgusting that a state that is so flush with money does not have one long-term mental health facility. And we see it when, somebody is arrested and is placed on a 72-hour hold. They bounce between 72-hour holds and jails.
This is
Okay?
something
And then they're
gubernatorial
released.
Candidate Fred Simon brought up. The 72-hour hold is killing us because
Right.
the medication doesn't kick in. They don't dry out.
Exactly.
72 hours is just enough
It's
time for them
nothing.
to be jonesing and get out and
Exactly.
get fixed.
And what happens is, but when you have long-term mental health facilities, you understand that a huge demographic that is in our prisons should not be in our prisons. When we talk about diversionary programs through the courts, okay, they need to be diverted to long-term mental health facilities. And the fact that Nevada doesn't have it is why we have a homeless problem.
And if they truly need mental help, we need to be
Absolutely.
able to, because we could fix some of these problems if we got people the help they needed.
100%.
Well, that's great. Some things I got to ask you. I just read an article that said something about you making a donation to somebody who is friends with Catherine Cortez Masto. Have you ever made a donation to Attorney General Aaron Ford or Sisolak or Cortez Masto?
No.
Or is there any veracity to the comments that you're like an undercover Democrat or contributed to Democratic things?
No, I mean, I'll tell you what. I own the fact that I was a bleeding heart liberal in my 20s.
Right, you said that without reservation.
Like I said, I wanted to free the world and help every refugee across the world. And
Right. But that was in the early 2000s.
That was before the early 2000s.
All right.
Okay, that was still in the 90s.
So Aaron Ford wasn't the Attorney General.
No,
and Sisolak wasn't the governor.
No. Look, I mean, to say that I am a progressive, no, okay. I do have, look, I believe that people, whether they're, I support gay rights, okay. I have no issue with how people live. Their lifestyles are their lifestyles as long as they don't push that
Infringe
on me.
your rights, right.
Okay. And I don't think that, these issues should be addressed in schools. I don't believe that transgender studies should be in schools. That's not where we indoctrinate children about sexual proclivities or sexual choices, or whether it's a choice or it's not.
Or social justice.
Or social justice. These things should be left outside the classroom. So, that being said, that article was about my support of the first openly gay justice to be appointed. And, I want to remind people that this justice was appointed to a judge by Brian Sandoval and then appointed to the Supreme Court. She is absolutely brilliant. I don't make determinations on anybody's
I think
sexual...
that's what most conservatives want.
Right.
They want the best man or woman
100%.
or trans person for the job.
Exactly.
If it happens to be
Exactly.
trans or black or
It
a
doesn't
woman
matter.
or Jewish.
Right. It doesn't matter. I'm a merit-based person, and I'm very proud to be a merit-based person. If you are... I don't care about your political ideology as long as you follow the law. And what we've seen with this justice is that her track record is simply impeccable.
Right.
And I will support her and
long as you're
again
not
and
an
again and again.
activist.
Exactly.
Just follow the rule of law.
She's very pragmatic, and I like pragmatic judges.
Good.
So, yeah.
And why don't you take 30 seconds to 60 seconds and you could give your elevator pitch to the voters and tell them why we should support you in the primary as well as in the general election.
Thank
The
you.
floor is all yours.
Well, if Nevadans want to change, I know that we have seen our state go into a serious free fall when it comes to public safety, when it comes to the transparency and really the infringement of constitutional rights. I'm your girl. I'm the one that's going to protect you. I'm the one that's going to be the top prosecutor. I will make our streets safe again and make crime illegal again.
Beautiful. And how can people find out more about you or contribute to your campaign or find out where you're going to be speaking?
They could sign up on Chattah for Nevada. That's CHATTAH for Nevada, NEVADA.com. So
that sounds really cool, but
Chattah
it's really
for Nevada.
But typing it out, yeah, Chattah, and it's the number 4 or the word 4?
The number 4.
You know, one of our guests bought both websites, the number 4 and the word FOR.
I think I own both too.
Good job. Chattah for Nevada.com. You know, that'll help me pronounce it right. I'm from the East Coast. So Billy Joel had a song called I'm Gonna Make a Stop in Nevada.
Right.
And people yell at me when I say Nevada. Wrong. Right. And I make a conscious effort and I do it right. But if I remember Chattah for Nevada,
there you go.
I can't screw it up anymore.
You can't.
Joshua Lee Mack, they've been busting your chops about your interview with me saying Nevada too much. Just remember Chattah for Nevada.
That's right.
And you can't forget. Well, Sigal, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's awesome. I had such a blast.
And you guys, if you guys love this content, we're going to have all sorts of other candidates on. Sigal's probably going to be coming back. Just hit the subscribe button. We don't ask you to buy nothing. We don't ask you to support nothing. All we ask is that you subscribe so we can grow, get our message out, and just let you guys know the truth, where to find your own research and make your own decisions. We don't want you to do what we tell you to do. We want you to lead you in the direction of common sense and analytical thinking. So look us up, thejohnnybrewshow.com. Email me at thejohnnybrewshow@gmail.com. Give us a call or a text at 702-501-5304. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Sigal.
Thank you.
And we're looking forward to next time. My name is John Brookhagen. You're watching The Johnny Brew Show.